Hey, AP Gov students. This is a quick review of the AP videos on Unit 4.1 and 4.2. And what I'm doing here is just making it more relevant to what's going on in the news today. This in no way replaces those videos. So watch them yourself. So 4.1 goes over the 5 core American values. So we have individualism, equality of opportunity, free enterprise, limited government, and rule of law. Here's a little trick to remember those 5: relief, so a little e, which would change it to rule of law, equality of opportunity, limited government, individualism, and free enterprise. You can make it like enterprise free and reverse it, but that should help you remember. So some students this year have already asked me, what's the difference between liberals and conservatives? A great question. And the video you saw goes through the different ways liberals and conservatives view those 5 core values. So if I had a great props for this video, I would have different sunglasses. And some would be very dark, maybe some would be rose tinted, maybe some would be small. So that if you were to look at anything with different colored sunglasses, it would always look different, even though it's the same thing. So individualism or equality of the opportunity look different to different people based on what glasses they're wearing, based on what lens they're looking at through it. And their lens comes from their background, their upbringing, their own personal opinions. So whether you're a liberal or conservative, you'll look at those 5 core values and you'll interpret them differently, and you'll prioritize them differently. Is one worth more than the other? So they go through some examples when it comes for equality of opportunity. Is the government responsible for fixing some inequalities, or are personal individual people responsible for trying to maximize their opportunities? So what you've seen in the news a lot in the past year with different social injustice protests is systemic racism. Should the government try to stop and correct things that have occurred because of systemic racism, or do people, regardless of what they faced, are they personally responsible to maximize their opportunities to not have to deal with such things? Now, of course, that seems biased in the explanation, but if you look at the news, that'd just be like a more current example. Individualism, free enterprise. So she goes through all the 5 different core values. So make sure you go back and look at it. What I would do is I would make a graphic organizer, and I would make 3 columns, and I would put the 5 values down, and then put liberal and conservative, and then put these little weights they put on the balance. I would fill that in each. And when you take your notes, that's what I would make sure you have. Okay. Here's some examples. So when we think of free market, that is a value that all Americans, I shouldn't say all, but America in general has that as one of our core values. Now, AOC, who's a more extreme, I guess, liberal, if you will, right? She's saying why the free market is important, but climate change, right? So she would prioritize that above, and why that won't solve one thing. Whereas Kevin McCarthy, a conservative, the House Republican leader, right, is encouraging the need for a stronger free market. So you see how, based on liberal or conservative lenses, they will look at that a little bit differently. There's sample questions at the ends of both videos. Make sure you go through them and practice them. It's important. Okay, now 4.2 talks about political socialization. So who is socialized? Children are socialized, adults are socialized, and immigrants, or people who come to this country, are politically socialized. What do they learn? They learn different values, beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors. And how do they learn that, right? Your family, you're going to learn different things from conversations you overhear them say. School, just saying the Pledge of Allegiance, or what different teachers or what your peers tell you, and those peer groups, the people you spend your time with. The media, which of course includes social media, but also all sorts of media on TV, online, and everywhere else. And then anything else in your social environment. Often that's religious groups, other clubs, Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts. They are a part of your political socialization. And there's different ways you get socialized. Active socialization, right? Certain things are purposely around you. Passive, conversations you overhear. You overhear your parents talking about political things as a child. And selective exposure. They mention it like an echo chamber. If you constantly listen to Fox News, if you constantly listen to MSNBC or any other outlet, that you're choosing to constantly hear that, and constantly hearing those ideas over and over will help confirm your belief that that's the right idea. Um, if on social media, only following certain people, only associating with certain people, it actually will make an algorithm so you hear more, read more of the same thing, and then that sort of increases. So what does this affect? Well, it affects political legitimacy and political efficacy, which are two terms that you're practicing for this unit. So real quick, political science, right? How do they define these things? Political efficacy on the bottom is, do you trust your government? How do citizens trust it? And then on the top, political legitimacy is, do you accept political authority? Don't think of it so much as a person usually, but a law or a regime. Okay. You see a lot of examples of this as we discuss the Capitol riots of the past few weeks, right? People trusting their government or lack of that, and who they put their authority in, or lack of that. So trying to make some connections there. Okay. It also talks about globalization influences. So we're not just politically socialized by looking within the United States, but also by looking without. She gives the example of when Hillary Clinton in 2016 talked about paid family leave and concluded with, that's why every other advanced country already has it. So when you hear like, that's what other countries do, right? Globalization influences. You hear that a lot with, why are we the only Western country that still has the death penalty? Or more recently, think of COVID, right? This was just from a few days ago, talking about Canadian companies uniting to start mass virus testing. So we might be like, maybe we should do that in America too, right? Why does this country have this type of lockdowns, right? Why does New Zealand very effective at keeping it low? So that's the global influence. Okay, once again, make sure you go over the questions at the end. Especially this one, it sort of shows you a little graphic that compares and contrasts different issues as how valued they are by the party. This is not a set in stone. This is not an official platform. But look at the news lately and see, does this match up, right? Who's more concerned about immigration? Who's more concerned about race relations? And do you think this is accurate? All right. See you guys. Why they took